Thank you and welcome to FCA International's May Safety Call. The purpose of these calls is to provide information and work to create a community of safety professionals in the signatory finishing industry. The latest updates to the U.S. Safety Manual has been made and will be distributed shortly. If you have received one in the past, we will send it directly to you. But if you have not received one before, you can request it at the Safety Resources page at finishingcontractors.org. And with that, we'll start our presentation. We'll have time at the end for any questions, but if any questions or anything pop up along the way, don't hesitate to speak up. This is your call. And now we welcome Rich Martin, a senior safety professional with OnPoint. Thanks for being with us here today, Rich.
All right. Thank you, John. Greetings, everyone, and thank you for logging in. Our topic today is going to be slip, trip, and fall hazards, and we're also going to look at working from elevated work platforms such as scissor lifts, boom lifts, and some of the fall protection considerations we need to look at for those. So we are going to start here with our FCA information screen for the safety helpline. You can screen grab that. That will again show up as always at the end of the presentation as well. Information to contact FCA and to contact us if you have any safety related questions, you need some guidance or some information. All right, as we look at falls in the workplace, we know as safety professionals that falls have been consistently the #1 cause of serious and fatal injury in all workplaces, not just construction, but also general industry, agriculture, maritime and shipyard type work. We're focusing in, of course, on construction here. And if we look here at this chart, it has been updated to reflect statistics all the way up through last year. We can see here what you're looking at is the top 10 citations OSHA writes citations for. If we look for the last 5 years, and if we were to go make this chart a 10-year chart, you would see that the #1 thing OSHA writes citations for is for fall protection. That may cover a number of aspects related to fall protection, including training, equipment, use of equipment, proper use of equipment, and excuse me, my voice is already failing on me. But this is fall protection. You'll also see fall protection show up a little later under training. Scaffolding, we factor that in under fall protection as well, because that is one of the big things that OSHA writes citations for is inadequate fall protection on scaffolding. Ladder usage also has its own fall hazards, improper use of a ladder, poor equipment, ladder placement, and even little things like condition of ladder, something as simple as warning stickers and instructional guidance that are supposed to be clear and legible and visible on the ladders not being present. OSHA writes citations for that as well. And there's your fall protection training. So if we look at this chart here, we will see that 40% of the citations that OSHA writes are related to fall hazards or fall protection specifically. And you will see that this is consistent. These 4 are in the top 10 every year for the last 10 years, the last 5 showing here. So if we look at what OSHA has defined as the OSHA Fatal 4, or the 4 biggest things that lead to fatal injuries in construction, #1 is fall protection, consistently between 35 and 38%. About 36% of fatal injuries in construction are specifically due to falls. Another 10% are due to being struck by falling objects. Could be something as simple as a hammer falling onto someone from above to something significant like a rigging failure and someone was under a load that was being carried from one location to another. Electrocutions are at 9%. and caught in between hazards, including machine guarding, as well as being caught between, let's say, an excavator and a dump truck, or a forklift and a wall. But if we were to add up number 2, 3, and 4, struck by electrocutions caught in between, we still wouldn't be close to the number of people that are killed related to falls. So that comes out to what, 21%, still significantly less than the 36% fatalities caused by falls. So it is serious. OSHA's on top of it. They have a number of national emphasis programs out there that will cause them to just show up and visit your site based on conditions. We have a number of clients that do excavation work, and they are getting hit by OSHA compliance officers that are just showing up because they see the yellow excavator working. And they show up to say, hey guys, we're here from OSHA. How you doing? You know, noticed you guys working, and they may be asking things about excavation safety and eyeballing the excavation to make sure that sloping looks good or trench boxes are being used appropriately. But while they're in there looking at that, they are also looking at perhaps someone jumping over the trench instead of going around, or walking over a trench using a 2x instead of actually having a legitimate bridge. Trench is more than 6 feet deep. We need a bridge with guardrails so that we don't fall sideways into the trench. And before you know it, OSHA showed up to look at excavation, and they're writing citations for failure to protect against fall hazards. They are also doing national emphasis programs for silica. So if they see silica dust clouds, they may show up on your site. And I believe we mentioned this in our last meeting. OSHA has just established, I believe it was on April 10th, a national emphasis program for heat-related emergencies. So on days where the heat index is 80 degrees or higher, OSHA is most likely going to be out on the street just doing pop-up visits. They may be outreach type visits where they're just trying to communicate, let the workers and the employers know that OSHA's out there, and also just converse, make sure guys know what the hazards are, how to protect themselves from the hazards, being able to recognize signs and symptoms, things like that. So do understand that OSHA is out there. They may show up, or they may show up because of something else that happened. And while they're there, they may see something that you guys are doing as well. This happened a couple of years ago. Worker got injured in a soil collapse, and one of our clients said, well, OSHA's going to be out tomorrow. Can you come out real quick and make sure we're all squared away on our scaffolding? Because when OSHA's out there, if they see some scaffolding issues out of the corner of their eye, they may come over and take a look at that as well. All right, let's look at some statistics here. In 2025, there were 389 construction worker fatalities. That added up to 38% of all construction fatalities for 2025. We have not yet seen statistics for non-fatal injuries for 2025. But if you look at 2024, there were over 119,000 worker injuries, 88,000 resulting in days away from work. So we know that days away from work injuries are more significant than the guy who on Friday tripped and fell, banged his knee, felt like it was sore, reported it, but came into work Monday and he's fine. When we are looking at days away from work, 88,000 in 2024. Take a look at the 2023 statistic, only 50,000 in 2023. So more than double in 2024 than in 2023. And then if we go back to 2021, construction industry accounted for 48% of all fatal injuries due to falls. So construction industry is raising the banner high there, and it is a significant hazard in the field. If we look at falls at the same level, so when we think of falls, most people think of falling from a height, from above to below. Falls at the same level, 2025, there were 145 worker fatalities and more than 400,000 non-fatal injuries resulting in days away from work. Last year, there was I think it was last year, it might have been the year before, there was a concrete worker that was just doing flat work on the ground, sidewalks, driveways, patio, who knows what. But he backed up and tripped over one of the forms for the concrete, fell and it hit his head. got back up, shook it off, went back to work. Half an hour later, he started acting goofy. They called the ambulance. Half an hour later, he's dead in the hospital from a significant brain injury that was not recognized in time. And all he did was step backwards and trip over a piece of lumber, fall and hit his head. Just a quick side note on that. That is one of the reasons why OSHA is making a big point about head protection, safety helmets or hard hats equipped with chin straps, so that when you fall, the hard hat stays on your head, allowing the head to hit the ground with that hard hat cushion rather than directly hitting the ground. And you will still see a lot of resistance on construction workers' parts to wearing those chin straps or switching to some of those newer helmets. Just a quick aside on that. In the fire service, the firefighters wear basically the same helmet that they wore when Benjamin Franklin started the modern fire service in the United States. There have been some enhancements in material and head harnesses and things like that, but the design remains the same. Why? Because firemen are nothing if not traditional, and that's a fire helmet. If you went to Europe and you looked at firefighters there, they wear a helmet that looks more like a cross between a motorcycle helmet and an astronaut helmet. And they'll ask American firefighters, why don't you switch to this helmet? It's lighter weight, it's cooler, better protection. And the American firefighters all say, because that's not a fire helmet. All right. Construction guys are the same way. They look at some of these new helmets and they say, that looks like a mountain climber helmet. That looks like a bicycle helmet. That looks stupid. I like my hard hat and I want my hard hat. So there are companies that are working hard to make hard hats and safety helmets that are much more formative to your traditional hard hats. I just bought one from Studson, not Stetson, the cowboy hat company, but Studson. And it looks pretty darn close to a full brim hard hat, and getting positive comments from it from construction workers who really don't want to get to the safety helmet looking thing. Milwaukee makes a pretty decent helmet, but it looks like a helmet, but people buy it because it's Milwaukee, so that's okay. But a lot of the hard hats that are out there that provide the really enhanced protection, resistance from the construction workers because they just don't look right. All right, the third type of fall is being struck by falling objects. The last statistic I was able to find was for 2020, 217 fatalities from being struck by falling objects. So we're going to look at those particular aspects and discuss those a little bit. Unprotected edges. Well, many people think of roofing when you think of unprotected edges or steel erection, leading edge work. All right. When you have unprotected edges, it may be a platform on a scaffold. It may be a boom lift where the loading gate is being held open and one side of the guardrails is missing because the gate is being held open for whatever reason. Keep in mind that the number one best way of eliminating or protecting from hazards is the engineering controls provided by guardrails. So when you can put up guardrails, that would be your first line of defense. So install guardrails along any unprotected edges at fall hazards greater than 6 feet, over dangerous machinery, and often not considered. What about water? You're working on the edge of a body of water. And if you drop off of the retaining wall into the water, can you get back up? Can you swim? Can you swim to the access ladder? We have seen people doing erosion protection alongside waterways, Lake Michigan, for example. And a couple of our clients will have a life ring with a pull rope on the side of the excavator, so that if the worker does fall from the slippery rocks into the water, they can throw him a life ring and pull him to safety. So that's pretty good forward thinking there. Elevated platforms. That includes not just your mobile elevating work platforms, but a catwalk above a work area. Think of, well, your scaffolds, obviously, your bridges transitioning from one working area to another might be an elevated platform. Those need to be evaluated regularly, periodically in construction because everything gets such hard use. And because the site is so dynamic, everything just changes from day to day. A qualified person should be assessing those elevated platforms pretty much daily and anytime conditions change to make sure that they are still secure. We had an incident not too long ago. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago now, but guardrails around an excavation approximately 15 feet deep. In order to lower equipment and materials down into the excavation, the guardrail was repeatedly pried away from the posts. The materials were loaded back in, and then when the guardrails were replaced, the workers would just line up the nails with the nail holes, bang them back into place. And as you know, the more you remove and replace, the less grip those nails have in that wood. And a worker was lowering a sheet of plywood on a rope, leaning over that guardrail, and the guardrail just dropped away, causing him to fall forward and down into that pit about 15 feet. He ended up with a separated shoulder, head injury. He's fine, his head's fine, his neck and back are fine, but due to the shoulder injury, it's a career-ending injury. So now he teaches, I think, at the Construction Safety Council or something. But it's there are often the inspections ends up looking at the guardrails. All right, they're all present. We have a top rail, we have a mid rail. Everything looks like it's nailed on the right side of the posts. We might rock it a little bit and say, okay, that feels solid. But remember, those guardrails have strength ratings they need to meet as well. Any holes in floors less than 2 inches in their least dimension. I'm sorry, that should be greater than 2 inches in their least dimension, need to be covered. The reason you see the 2-inch mark is because that's big enough for something to fall below onto somebody down below, a sharp object, a heavy piece of think of a large nut from steel erection falling through a hole that's been cut in the concrete for a pipe chase and nailing somebody down below. And then also look at the walls where you're working near. If there are openings in the wall, for example, for windows, if the bottom edge of that hole is less than 39 inches above the floor, we need to put guardrails there too, because it could be a hole in a wall that you could fall through down to the next level below. I've tried to throw in a couple of humorous pictures here just for the the effects. I always wonder how much of these are staged, but here we've got a guy who's working outside, installing windows, caulking, putty, and glazing. I don't know what he's doing, but he's got a rope tied around his waist. The guy's anchoring him. If that guy were to fall, what's the guy with the rope going to do? Yeah, maybe he might even make a valiant effort to hold on tight. But the moment that guy starts getting a little heavy, he's going to let go of that rope because he doesn't want to go over also. And if you look at the trees and the other building down there, you realize the guy's probably 30, 40 feet above the ground. So note too, the ladder being so close to the windows. Raising yourself up off of the floor on that ladder may expose you to fall hazards. If we look at scaffolds, remember that we have supported scaffolds, suspended scaffolds, bakers and mobiles are very common. And of course, scissor lifts, and I think we'll get to boom lifts as well. Remember that a scaffold competent person must inspect that scaffold at the beginning of each day. Anytime scaffold assembly or disassembly is taking place, anytime an event happens that may have caused compromise to the scaffold system, or anytime conditions change that may affect the stability of that scaffold. Things you might look for are the base plates sinking into the ground because the ground is soft due to rain the night before? Are cross braces, have they been removed to get things onto the scaffold, and have they been replaced and put in properly? Are components pinned properly? The inspection needs to be documented, number one, for accountability's sake, And number two, in the event there is an incident, OSHA is going to be looking for that documentation. And as we know, their attitude is if it isn't written down, it didn't happen. So it doesn't have to be a documentation on an official checklist. It could be notes in a logbook somewhere that said, I inspected the scaffold system on the west side and the north side of the building, 1, 2, and 3 levels. All pins are in place, cross braces are in place, guardrails are intact and secure, scaffold is fully planked, and you can document it that way. Checklists are great. I love them because if you have a good checklist, you're not going to miss things because you didn't think of it at the moment. On the other hand, I hate checklists because there is a thing called safety by checklist. And what happens is you limit your inspection to those items that are on the checklist. And because something is not on the checklist, you may not consider it or you may not even look at it. But do document them. There is no specific requirement that I've been able to find that scaffolds be inspected and tagged, but a good professional scaffold crew will tag a system, usually with a red tag, yellow tag, green tag system. Green tag means the system has been inspected, looks good, no deficiencies, no unsafe conditions noted. Yellow tag may indicate that this scaffold system has been inspected. There's an area over here where you should not go, and that might be identified. And then a red tag system would be, thou shalt not go up on this scaffold until we fix it. And those tags should be placed at every access point to that scaffold. So if you're using a ladder to get to an upper level or a stairwell, a stair tower to get up to upper levels, the tag should be there. So people can look at it and say, okay, we're good or we're not good. Remember that platforms need to be fully planked. The gap between planks cannot be more than an inch. If there is room for a plank should be put in there. A lot of people think that you have to use scaffold grade planking, and of course that is best. It is lumber that is defined by the lumber industry, not by ANSI, not by ASTM, not by OSHA, but as being of a very strong type and grade of lumber. The OSHA standard only says that scaffold planking cannot deflect more than 1/60th of the span. So that's the only criteria that OSHA puts in related to the type of scaffold planking. Other planking may include engineered planking with hooks that hook onto the tubular structure. If you use lumber that is not scaffold planking, remember that you may need to increase the supports underneath to prevent the 1/60th deflection. Sometimes you cannot get a plank in place because of the configuration of the building that you're working against. In that case, you can use sheets of plywood to cover spans, but we want to make sure that the gaps in the working platform are no more than 1 inch. And that would be another entire topic of discussion. Remember that when you're working on scaffolds, the fall protection height does change to 10 feet. So if you are working just generally in construction, your fall protection height is 6 feet. But when you are working on scaffolds, it becomes 10 feet. And that has to do with the way scaffolds are built and the size of scaffold heights and sections. Scissor lifts fall under scaffolding standard. So even scissor lifts, fall protection would not be required until the scissor lift is 10 feet higher. Fortunately, scissor lifts, the fall protection in the form of guardrails is integral to the lift. And a good scissor lift will have automatic closing of access points, either spring-loaded and self-latching gates or bars or other systems that provide a mid-rail to complete the guardrail protection. But scaffolding is 10 feet or more above the next level. If we look at this one here, do we see an issue? You know, if we count rungs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that guy there's about 15 feet up in the air and standing on a scaffold, on a ladder on top of the scaffold. Is his fall protection adequate? Even if we go with the 10-foot height on scaffolding, he's probably about 8 feet above that 10-foot height. And he's also in a stairwell. So we don't want to see this kind of thing. Let's look at ladders. All right. Remember that ladders need to be set up and used properly. By the way, if I mispronounce ladders and say ladders, it's because I cannot tell you how many times I use speech to text in my inspection program and it pops out letters. So I have to sit there and say ladders in order for speech to text to catch it. But make sure those ladders are set up and used properly. Make sure they are inspected before use and as conditions change. Any deficiencies that may affect the safe use of the ladder must be taken out of service and tagged out of service and not used until replaced or corrected. And OSHA writes a lot of deficient ladders, even though they're not in use, because they are missing that standards required tag that informs people do not use this ladder. Anytime you are ascending or descending a ladder, you have to maintain 3 points of contact. A lot of safety guys will look at the 3 points of contact and ladders and sit there and say, you're not maintaining 3 points of contact while you're working on that ladder. All right. The standard and real practicality only requires that you maintain grip and security on that ladder, and it's typically interpreted as maintaining 3 points of contact, which means that anytime you are going up the ladder or coming down the ladder, you either have 2 hands and 1 foot on the ladder or 2 feet and 1 hand on the ladder. So what that means is that you can't really carry things up the ladder with you unless you are able to maintain that 3 points of contact. Once you're in your working position and you get yourself settled in, you lean into the ladder, you stay between the ladder rails. You're not standing on the top 2 steps of a step ladder. That is sufficient. The 3 points of contact is specifically when climbing and descending the ladder. When you're using step ladders, remind the workers, do not use the top 2 steps. I see a lot of people using step ladders by leaning them against a wall or leaning them against some kind of support. That is not proper use of that ladder. The ladders are not designed to be used in that manner, and that will also earn you an OSHA citation. And remember, straight ladders, that would be your single section ladders. Non-self-supporting ladders would be the technical term. Your extension ladders. If you are using them to climb from a lower level to a higher level, and you are going to transition to that higher level, that straight ladder needs to extend at least 3 feet past the surface. A field measurement is just count the rungs and make sure there are at least 3 rungs above the surface. And that's to give the user a handhold to grasp onto as they transition onto or off of the ladder. We have a client that provided this photo. They got so frustrated with people not using ladders properly, they just put labels on the ladders. If we catch you on the yellow step, you're suspended. If we catch you on the red step, you're terminated. And, that's just their attitude. All right, mobile elevating work platforms. If we look at the operators for the mobile elevating work platforms, they need to be trained. They can be self-trained, but what's the level of training? All right. If the guy has been using mobile elevating work platforms for 20 years, he probably does fall under the standard for competent or qualified person. A person by training, knowledge, or experience can recognize the hazards and, all of those caveats. It is still a great idea for every employer to farm this type of training, powered industrial trucks, mobile elevating work platforms, things like that. Farm it out to an outside trainer. By doing that, you assure that the training is done, all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, every topic is covered, not just the ones that the trainer felt was important because he has to hurry up and get this training done so we can get back to work type mentality. So whoever does the training, there should be a qualified trainer. and should provide some certification level. Powered industrial trucks require certification level training about every 3 years. That kind of training is not required for mobile elevating work platforms, but we still think it's a great rule to follow. Every 3 years, have your guys go through not just a toolbox talk, but literally a half a day or even a full day of just training, academic and practical, on how to use these machines. And the operator also needs to be trained on the specific machine they're going to be using. So that's also key. Make sure that, just like with a powered industrial truck, that unit gets inspected before use. You're looking for things like compromised guardrails, self-closing gates that don't close properly and don't latch properly, warning devices. We just found a scissor lift that did not, the audible alarm that is supposed to sound when the scissor lift is going up and down was not sounding. It did have a horn, so the operator, if he needed to, could hit a horn button and warn people he's moving. But little things like that should be addressed and written up for correction right away. When you're using the MEWPs, is the floor of the working surface stable? That includes dips, holes, weak spots. You're working in a building and there's a hole in the floor that's going to eventually be running ductwork through it, and it's covered over with a sheet of plywood. Is the lighting sufficient for the operator to see that hole in that cover? Is the cover sufficient to support the expected weight? These are things that need to be looked at as well. This picture here went viral a few years later. I'm convinced this has to be early AI. That can't be real, but that was out there. It seems to me that a telescoping boom lift would have been a much better choice than this, if this is real. But this was probably viral 5-6 years ago, before AI really became huge. But it is an amusing picture. Make sure that workers are keeping their feet on the platform at all times. People will step up on a 5-gallon bucket on a box of materials to bring a step ladder up into the platform with them. They'll step up on the guardrails. We want to make sure that the feet on the platform will keep them within that protective range of that those guardrails. And, another humorous picture, if only he had something to lift himself up a little bit higher. And I want to give the guy grace and say, well, maybe he didn't have the key for the machine, or the machine wasn't operating, or it needed to be charged. But still, we see this a lot. What about other workers in the area? Remember, a lot of people are killed or injured from falling objects. If we are working in an elevated area, maybe the area below where we're working should be cordoned off, signed, barricaded, warn people, hey, if you're working in this area, wear a hard hat, or better yet, don't go in this area while we're working. I see a lot of steel workers welding while up in scissor lifts and boom lifts, and not worrying about where the slag and the spark and cutoffs are falling down below. So be careful with that. And then a rescue plan. Anytime you're working in a mobile elevated work platform, I hate it when I see a lone worker working in an elevated lift, because if he has a problem up there, machine failure, to I passed out because my blood sugar was low, or I had a heart attack, to I came in contact with the power lines and I got shocked. They are completely at the mercy of some passerby noticing that something's not right and maybe making a phone call. And we know how caught up we are in our tunnel vision of just doing our own thing. We may not even notice something that's going on around us. And the guy up in the lift, it may be hours before people notices he really has a problem. So OSHA does, it's not OSHA, it's ASTM, I believe, does require a rescue plan. And of course, OSHA refers to ASTM, that you have to have a rescue plan when you're working up in those lifts. And that may be a ground person nearby who can call 911 or knows how to get the lift down using the ground controls on the base of the equipment, to maybe a second worker on a second lift somewhere that can come down and help out, or bring that lift over and raise it up to help the worker out. But some rescue plan, what are we going to do if someone falls and is dangling from their fall protection harness or has some other problem? Remember, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but if you fall and you're dangling in your harness, suspension trauma or harness syndrome, whichever term you want to use, can set in, and people have died within 15, 20 minutes of falling and dangling in their harness. What about other hazards? There may be hazards that we haven't discussed yet. Rolling stock. All right, flatbed comes up and it starts dropping off your materials, and you're walking around on a flatbed truck, and that truck is more than 4 feet off the ground. This is an issue in general industry because general industry's fall protection height is 4 feet. Can you die at 4 feet? Yeah, you can. So if people are working on rolling stock, let's say you're on a flatbed truck and you're standing on top of the materials that are being delivered, and now you're more than 6 feet off the ground. We need to think about that. The equipment, are we climbing around on our equipment, our heavy mobile equipment, our scaffolds? Are we using that properly? Stacks and materials, unsafe climbs, such as using overturned buckets, chairs, boxes, whatever's available, because the ladder's all the way across the room and I just need to reach up here momentarily and I just grab whatever's right there. Love this picture. At least the guy had the forethought to put 2x underneath the ladder feet so they don't punch through the plastic bottoms of the ladders. But people do this kind of stuff all the time. That's an internet picture. I did not take that picture, by the way. All right. If we look at slips, trips, and falls as being a factor in construction as well, most commonly people will slip on things like water, ice, snow, grease, oil, food. Water is particularly tricky because water can often conceal a slippery substance under the water surface, such as, let's say, algae or slime or gravel or something that may cause you to slip. Depending on the work environment you're working in, those others may be a factor as well. Dust, powders, and granules are very common. This is where general housekeeping and sweeping of the floors comes in and is important. A change in direction, you're walking rapidly and you make a hard right turn because you're avoiding something, and there's some dust or some granular material on the floor and your feet slip out from under you. That's a common occurrence. Sloped and uneven surfaces, think of change in elevation type surfaces, a small step up. Those should be ramped or clearly marked so people can tell, even in low light conditions, that there's a change in elevation coming up. Out on a ground up type construction site, muddy terrain, mud and snow being tracked in through the entrances and exits, that also needs to be maintained and looked out for because it gets spread around. And as you are entering or exiting a building, the change in light conditions may reduce your ability to even see that a slip hazard is there. So keeping those entryways clear is important. Plant debris, hidden hazards. Was watching some guys doing some outside work on the exterior of a building. Basically what they're doing is they're resealing the panels on a steel-clad building. So they're ripping out the caulk between the sections and replacing the caulk. But because of the landscaping, they had difficulty placing their ladders. When they stepped down from the ladder, where's the ladder? It's set in a bush. So when they get off the ladder, they either have to step into the bush and work their way out, or they have to jump clear. So plants could be a problem. Hidden hazards. Loose debris on the floor and ground. This is, again, general housekeeping. If we can maintain general housekeeping, we can make big strides in reducing slip, trip, and fall hazards. And then, of course, items not being properly put away. Hoses and cords. Keep those walking pathways clear, especially elevated platforms, catwalks, stair towers, stairways, nothing stored on the stair treads. Keep the area at the top and the bottom of ladders and stairs clear. OSHA says at least 36 inches. 36 inches is good, 48 inches is even better. But we don't want to have a transition from a ladder or a stairway onto a landing or onto the ground. And the first thing you have to do is navigate an obstacle course in order to get away from the ladder. So we need to keep those areas clear. Route hoses and cords away from walking paths, also paths to egress and emergency exits. If we're trying to get out in a hurry because there's something bad going on, we already have to deal with making our way to the exit, the panic factor. We don't want to be tripping over things that are being routed through doorways. So if we have to route things through doorways, do it in such a manner that it does not create a tripping hazard. Maintain general housekeeping, provide adequate lighting. We talked about the change in lighting conditions. When using stairs, use handrails. When you're climbing ladders, maintain that 3 points of contact. Take a look at your footwear. All right. In fact, it's probably a good idea to have someone else take a look at your footwear. And you just look and make sure that the treads are still in one piece and that they have good lugged soles, good traction. So that if you are working in slippery or unstable ground, you have just that little bit more purchase and stability. If you have a break or a change in elevation, remember that ramps or steps must be provided anytime that break in elevation is more than 18 inches. Make sure that any ramps or steps that you do put in or that you use are secure. They have some kind of slip and catch protection that might be cleats on ramps or friction tape on ramps to give you a little bit more traction. Make sure that the ramps and steps are strong enough to support any expected weight. And, take a look at the stairs. And if you've got a 500-pound load to dolly up those stairs and the stairs look like, well, that's good for maybe 1 or 2 people, but not a 500-pound load. Factor that into your decision making when you're moving those loads around. And keep those ramps and steps clear and clean. Ladder placement. A lot of times I'll see people putting step ladders in front of doorways. If you have to put a step ladder in front of the doorway, open the door and prop it open so people coming through from the other side can see that you are there. A lot of times people will just push through a door and hit the ladder and cause the person on the ladder to lose their balance or get distracted. So if you're working in front of a doorway, keep that doorway open. If you're working in front of a doorway and you have to get down off that ladder and step away from it, move the ladder out of the doorway just in case that pathway needs to be used for emergency egress. Also watch out carts, large and small tools. A lot of times people push carts around and they're so busy looking at all the obstacles, they may bump into a ladder and cause someone on a ladder to lose focus. If you are on the ladder, I will see people walk away from ladders and leave tools and objects on the top step of that ladder. And if someone bumps into it, those items can fall down on them. So especially things like drills with pointy ends to them, maybe bring those down or secure them so that if they do fall off the top, so that they don't fall off the top of the ladder and hit someone down below. And make sure we don't get into each other's way. This has to do with occupancy load. You got a 5-pound bag and you stick 10 pounds of workers in there. We just get in each other's way and we start jostling and tripping and falling because of that. General housekeeping is critical. Clean up as you go. I've seen crews not do general housekeeping because they just sit there and say, well, the haul away crew doesn't come until Friday. Okay, so you're going to trip and fall all week until Friday, and then you're going to do your general housekeeping. Clean up as you go. It makes it a lot easier than at the end of the day. Okay, we'll take the last hour of the day and we'll clean up, but no, wait, we got to be out by 3 o'clock. And something came up and we couldn't be done by 2, so we could clean for an hour, and then it doesn't get done. It is much easier to just clean up as you go. Have those gondolas for trash and debris removal. Have a designated area for those gondolas for that crew that says, well, nobody, this is downtown. We're in a high-rise building in the city, and the building doesn't want anybody to even know that there's construction work going on. So we can't have people trucking things up and down the elevators. So they just have a designated area on that floor. This is where all the gondolas go. And on Friday, we'll bring them all down and we'll dump them into the dumpster. But do have that designated area. You might need 2 or 3 depending on the size of the floor that you're working on. Make sure that hoses, cords, ropes, all of those types of things are routed along walls. Keep them off the middle of the floor as much as possible. If you're not using the hose or the rope or the cord, move it off to the side or coil it up and store it properly. On stairs, run them along the stringers. Sometimes people will run it straight up from a lower level to the 4th floor between the handrails. Well, if you do that, you may have to secure the cord and the hoses so that they don't provide excess weight up there at the top. Doors, secure doors so that they don't close, and don't use a fire extinguisher as a door prop. Keep those, when I say secure doors so they don't close, what we don't want is doors closing on cords and hoses and damaging the cords or the hoses, creating electrical hazards and damaging your equipment. Make sure you provide adequate lighting on bright, sunny summer days. Outside, you step into a dark, dimly lit interior area, and you don't see that there's something on the floor right in front of you. Other hazards may include secondary hazards related to the fall. I fall and I only fell 4 feet, but I fell onto a piece of rebar that was 2 feet, long, and now I'm impaled on a piece of rebar. Watch out for those areas where you have to reach and strain to be able to do the work. You're more likely to fall or do a musculoskeletal injury. Watch out for those head injury and bump hazards. That includes while you're working in a scissor lift or an elevated boom lift, going up, wear that hard hat. You might have a threaded rod hanging down from the ceiling. You might have a truss up there that you didn't see, some other object, a mechanical piece denting your skull. So make sure that we have that head protection. More than 200 workers are killed annually by falling objects. That includes materials, tools, equipment, trash, debris, careless discard of materials. Toe boards are especially key. OSHA looks for those toe boards on scaffolds at those access points. Consider establishing a hazard zone below the work area. Consider tool tethering. Consider hoisting tools and materials by rope rather than trying to carry it up. Coordinate work schedules. I threw that in there because we had a client that got struck by objects falling from the roof. The roof workers did not know there was anybody on the scaffold down below. The scaffold workers did not know anyone was working on the roof above. And if they had communicated in the morning meeting what they were going to be doing, they could have arranged, the roof work. All they were doing was moving materials away from the edge. But they could have talked to the scaffold guys and said, when you take in your lunch break, we'll move our materials then. And the one worker would not have been hit and hurt for the season. On lift usage, there's those gates, 1, 2, 3 in a row right there. The gates do not latch securely. Many people will sit there and say, well, if I fall against the gate's not going to open in the outward direction. I'm not going to fall out. That's true. But if something happens that causes the machine to lose stability, or you lose your balance and you grab onto that gate in order to maintain balance and it opens up on you, you may fall down within the platform and injure yourself there. So make sure that the gates close properly, safety chains are securely attached, and so on. Make sure that your fall protection lanyards are in great condition. There are different types there, single lanyard, double lanyard. The single lanyard has a deceleration device attached on the one end there on the left. Watch out, make sure those are in good condition as well. Harnesses need to be in good condition. This is the only type of fall protection harness that is acceptable. There used to be butt slings, a belt with leg straps you used to be able to use, or just a waist belt. Those are not for fall protection. If you do invert and upend when you fall, you can slide and fall right out of those. This is your fall protection harness there. D-ring must be located in the center of the wearer's back near the shoulder level. A lot of times guys will share harnesses. You'll have a 6'5" guy sharing a harness with a 5'8" guy, and it never gets adjusted properly. That's where the D-ring needs to be. Straps must be snug. Typical rule of thumb is if you can slip your hand through and make a fist and then try and pull it out, if you can pull the fist out, it's too loose. For example, here he cannot get his fisted hand behind the strap. So we know that strap is snug enough. Make sure that the anchorage is as high above as possible above the working surface. What we don't want is, right here, the scaffold is only 5-6 feet up. Okay, so he's tied off, but how long is his lanyard? 10-12 feet. Well, that might help if he falls down that ladder way. But if he falls onto the platform below, he's going to hit the platform long before that lanyard reaches its limit. So we don't want situations like this. All right, because our anchorage is not above the worker, he pendulums right into the wall. Or in the second picture, he has extended his lanyard out so that it is longer than the fall distance and he hits the ground. Yo-yos or self-retracting lifelines must limit the fall to no more than 2 feet. A static lanyard like your web strap must limit your free fall distance to no more than 6 feet. Inspections are key, especially on these yo-yos. Many of them, the manufacturer says, send them back to us every X number of years, 5 years or whatever, to get inspected and recertified to make sure that they're still in great shape. Watch out on your hook. In the top picture, you'll see the arrow pointing to the red shock-loaded indicator, indicating that this system has taken a hit and it cannot be trusted anymore. The bottom picture shows what it should look like when you're inspecting your hook. So you should see that button sticking out and no red indicator showing that the thing has received a hit. When you are measuring your fall distance before fall, let's say the worker's 6 foot high, he's got a 6 foot length of lanyard, 3.5 foot deceleration strap unwinding there, plus a 1 foot harness stretch. That's when your D-ring leaves your shoulder blades and, jumps up to the top of your hard hat. 5 feet to the harness D-ring. Now that's your foot distance down to the ground, a 3 foot bounce factor, safety factor. All right, you can hang there. 9.5 feet fall arrest distance, 18.5 feet. With this system here, at 15 feet, you may have broken ankles because your system is just too long for the fall hazard. So when you have lower fall distances, it's a good idea to go to an SRL instead or use a shorter lanyard so that you don't fall as far. That suspension trauma, you take a fall, you take a hit, there's impact damage to the inside of your groin area, your blood vessels, your nerves, your tendons that are all in that inner thigh groin area there. Once you come to a stop and you stop flipping and bouncing around, you may the straps will start to cut off blood flow, and your blood won't return properly, and the blood below those straps is going to start accumulating bad chemicals, the off products of your circulatory waste system. And then when those straps get released, that bad blood starts circulating through your body again, could cause your heart to malfunction and other problems. So we want to make sure that we get fallen victims out of the harness as quickly as possible, get them down to the ground as quickly as possible. If the person is conscious, hopefully they'll be able to rescue themselves. They may have adjuncts, tools that they can use to, if not rescue themselves, at least buy themselves some time. Here's one, for example. On some harnesses, they may be equipped with 2 little pouches, one on each side. You open up the pouch, and these little straps drop down. You buckle them together, and you create a loop, and you can step up in that loop and relieve the pressure on those straps in your groin area, allowing blood to circulate normally. Yeah, you're not going to hang there forever. That's going to get old, but it might give rescuers a little bit more time to get a ladder up to you, a rescue system up to you. So when we talk about rescue plan, this would be the most basic form right here, the buying time plan. Keep in mind that the person who fell may not be conscious. They may not be able to do this on their own. In that case, we may have to bring another lift in to rescue them. We may have to get a ladder up to the platform to rescue them. In the middle, you'll see rescue equipment. that rescuers might use to come in from above, lower themselves down to the victim, and hook them up that way. There are some SRL systems that have a winch built into them. After you fall and you're hanging there, they may have a trigger that you can click, and it'll slowly lower you to the ground, extending the lanyard down to the ground. And I think they may come with 25, 35, and 50-foot lanyards. So they're pretty good. They're heavy, they're expensive, but it's another rescue option that's out there. All right. We are pretty much right on the wire, but if you have any questions, now's the time.
Great stuff, Rich. Any questions? Real quick, Rich, you mentioned those the hard hats and with the chin straps. Last we talked about those. Those are just something that OSHA was requiring for their own employees. That hasn't changed, right? That's still not being required for workers in the field, right? For
Correct. OSHA requires you to have an ANSI Z89 hard hat. The ANSI Z89 standard hasn't been updated in many years. That hasn't changed. So they won't cite you or enforce beyond the ANSI Z89 standard. What they did by putting out public service announcements and informing everybody that this is what they are going to do is they have set a standard that they can apply through the general duty clause. All right. You knew, or you should have known, that there is a better head protection system out there. We told you all about it. We did public service announcements. I mean, that would be what they would say. And so that means that if there is an injury, you won't be cited for not having a hard hat with chin strap. But if a worker falls, sustains a head injury that could have been prevented if that hard hat had stayed on their head, then the employer may face citations under the general duty clause for not providing or requiring their workers to wear their chin straps. And they have to be, some hard hats have like a little clip that you can clip in a strap here, and it's a single strap. It has to be a 4-point hard hat strap system. So usually it'll have a strap behind the ear, before the ear. They come together down here, and then they go around to the other side.
Yeah.
So it's more advanced than just putting a web strap from one side to the other.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hey, John, this is Tony Bachniak. Can you hear me?
Hey, Tony.
Hey, I do have a comment about that. I think you're right with what obviously you were saying about OSHA, but we are finding many, many customers in the industrial arena that are requiring the strapped hard hats, making us change to those hard hats on specific projects, etc. So they are definitely out there and being used in the construction industry, kind of being pushed a little bit by the customer, which is a good thing.
General contractors, especially the big ones, the Walshes, the Claycos, that have their own pretty aggressive safety departments. And, safety guys are always looking for reasons to justify their existence. And they are coming up with these standards, and they're good. I mean, it's good to, the number one killer of construction workers is falls, and slips, trips, and falls contribute. But the general contractors are requiring the hard hats. Sometimes are not cheap. I have had clients say, can you give me a justification to not wear these hard hats? So, that I can go to the general contractor and say, we don't need to wear these hard hats. Imagine a concrete crew that just does flat work, right? What are the fall hazards? Their fall hazards are, well, I trip over a form and I whack my head. Well, we just had an incident a couple years ago. So that becomes harder to find that exemption argument. But they look at some of these hard hats. The one I just bought's $150. Now they're sitting there saying, in order for me to bid for this job, and I got to throw 30 guys at this job, and I got to spend, $3,000 in hard hats. How do I put that in my bid? And it's an investment in the future, I suppose. But yeah, it's out there, and you'll be seeing it more and more. Eventually, at some point, ANSI is going to update their standard probably, and if not require the chin straps, make it a very strong recommendation.
Great. And Tony, thank you for the input as well. All right, seeing no additional questions, Rich, I'd just like to thank you for another great presentation. Great info, and the level of detail, and everything in it. So thank you so much for that. I think at this point we'll still be doing a June safety call, but so look out for notifications on that. So thank you all for participating. We'll get the video up here shortly on our YouTube channel with all our other safety videos. And don't hesitate to reach out to us with any of your safety related questions.